The panel tonight, Nan Hayworth, a former House Republican and a member of the Independent Women's Forum Board of Directors, Amy Parnes, CNN political analyst and a senior political correspondent for The Hill, Bill Press, host of The Bill Press Show, and Margaret Hoover, CNN political commentator and Republican consultant. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I guess, Margaret, let's start with you. What do you make of this news? I mean, the FBI has come out and said they have grave concerns about this.
Before the FBI said this, I'll tell you, forget sort of my partisan affiliation. I believe that we're in an open society. I believe that, we depend on an engaged citizenry to make educated, informed decisions with information ahead of us. And I'm not, before this, I really wasn't concerned that Americans would be able to see through whatever it was and just, look, more information is better. I mean, that's how I tend to approach these things. I tend to believe that transparency, sunlight is the best disinfectant. You get as much information out there, and then it's up to an engaged citizenry to make a decision. It does give me pause that the FBI director says there are grave concerns. I mean, that adds an element of caution here that also gives me pause, given the fact that having known Devin Nunes when I worked on Capitol Hill with him and having seen his progression, especially in the context of the Trump administration, having become what feels to me as more of an instrument of a Trump administration than a congressman serving his constituents in an impartial way, I'm concerned now.
Yeah. Well, what about that? I mean, we know that Nunes was asked about whether or not he's been working with the White House on this, and he refused to answer.
Look, this is Devin Nunes' deja vu, right? We've seen this before. Devin Nunes had to recuse himself from the Russian investigation because he said, I've got all this top secret stuff. I'm going to go down to the White House and tell them that I've discovered. It turns out this was stuff he got from the White House, went back to the Hill, went back to the White House. It was such a laughable thing. They threw him out as chair of the committee on this investigation. So now he's saying, I've got this top secret stuff. I've got to show the White House and then ask the White House to release it. I think it comes down to, as Margaret indicates, the choice is really between this wacky congressman from California or Donald Trump's appointee as director of the FBI, who says, whoa, transparency is one thing, but national security is another.
Well, and Nan, he's not just his director, he's somebody the president has come out and reiterated his faith in, right? So why do you think the Republicans are ignoring the concerns of this FBI director that they have said they trust?
Right. Well, I agree with Margaret. I think that we have to take the FBI director's concerns seriously. And I, too, have said, I'd like to see that memo. I'd like to see it appropriately scrubbed for security concerns, of course.
And I'd like to see the Democratic rebuttal.
And I don't have, and Bill, I don't have an objection to that either, quite honestly, because everybody will view these things in a certain light, obviously. What I'm eager to see is Inspector General Horowitz's report, which doesn't get an awful lot of attention in the midst of this political turmoil, and I think that's going to be most revealing. And the other thing that I never hear from the folks who are concerned about the memo is, how then do we explain Strzok and Page? I mean, those texts are damning. So certainly that leads people like me and many, many others to believe that there is something, there has been something at the higher echelons of the FBI that discredits the work of 99% of the Bureau.
Well, they were fired.
Doing their duty.
Once they were discovered, they were fired.
They've been repositioned.
And I think, but you raise the question of why not just wait for that Inspector General's report? It seems like because the Trump administration is very interested in discrediting the FBI.
Right. And I think that you've seen that drip, drip, drip. This is their focus. They want this out there for one reason and one reason only. They want to discredit the FBI. They want to prove that they were in the right on this. Bob Mueller's investigation is going to keep plowing straight ahead regardless. I don't think it's going to have much impact on this. I think it's just going to keep going, and it's going to pan, a certain segment will say, see, I told you so. And then, another group will say, no, this isn't right. So the conversation will continue.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about sunlight's the best disinfectant. The problem is hardly anybody's actually seen the underlying information, right? The underlying intelligence that went into the document. And the people who have are saying, other than the people who are very partisan, are saying this isn't really an accurate reflection. And in fact, I would argue the same thing for the Democratic memo. It's like, what's the difference? I mean, why should their memo go out if it's also based on things we've never seen?
By the way, I want to know what Carter Page was doing. Why was he having all of these meetings? And I think that's a legitimate question. And the FBI thought it was serious enough that he could be a spy for the Russians, and that's why they went to the FISA court. What was there?
Right, but of course what the Republicans are saying, and we don't really know what's true, is that they didn't give all the information to the judge on the FISA warrant. People who say they know about how these things are done, that's not really how it happens.
But I mean, this is the problem, is that we have an entire news cycle spun up over something that we know 1% of the information about, and it's all speculation.
You want information?
Yeah, I know. This is the information age, I thought.
But I think we can all agree that no one, certainly no Republican, is trying to impugn the entire Bureau by any means, and that particular line should be discarded. That is inaccurate and unfair.
I think that's a great point. It's just, like I said, the one of the people they've really gone out of their way to say is great is telling them not to release the memo. So, but we'll have to table this until the next segment.